Here we have Athea Carnegie Library, a small village library located in Athea, a small rural village in West County Limerick. Though it is no longer in use as a library, it is greatly regarded as a piece of significant architectural heritage in the area. Libraries such as this one would not be in existence were it not for the generosity of one man, Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie was born in Dunfermline, Scotland on November 25, 1835. He was born into a weaver family and spent the first few years of his life in a typical weaver's cottage, with only one main room consisting of half the ground floor, which was shared with the neighbouring weaver family. In 1848, he and his family moved to the United States in search of a better life. His family was so poor at the time that they had to borrow money in order to emigrate. Not long after moving to Pennsylvania, Carnegie got his first job as a bobbin boy, changing spools of thread in a cotton mill 12 hours a day, 6 days a week in a Pittsburgh cotton factory. His starting wage was $1.20 per week. 2 years later, in 1850, he started work as a telegraph messenger boy in the Pittsburgh office of the Ohio Telegraph Company. Here his weekly wage increased from the modest $1.20 per week in the cotton factory to $2.50 per week. During his time in the Telegraph Company, he befriended Colonel James Anderson, who boosted his passion for education and reading by opening his library of over 400 volumes to Carnegie every Saturday night. Carnegie always strived to better himself, and by the 1860s, he had investments in railroads, railroad sleeping cars, bridges, and oil derricks. He accumulated further wealth as a bond salesman, raising money for American enterprise in Europe. Soon he became incredibly successful in the steel business, eventually gaining a near monopoly of steel production in the USA, which began with the Pittsburgh's Carnegie Steel Company. In the late 1880s, Carnegie Steel was the largest manufacturer of pig iron, steel rails, and coke in the entire world, with a capacity to produce approximately 2,000 tons of pig metal per day. In 1888, Carnegie bought the rival Homestead Steel Works, and in 1892 he combined his assets and those of his associates with the launching of the Carnegie Steel Company. In 1901, aged 66, he sold the Carnegie Company and all its holdings to John Pierpont Morgan's Federal Steel Company for $480 million. The new company became the United States Steel Corporation. At this stage of his life, once he had sold his steel company, Carnegie became better known as a philanthropist. By early 1905, he had pledged $39,325,240 for 1,200 libraries in English-speaking countries, and of this money, $598,000 was for Ireland. Between 1897 and 1913, he promised over £170,000 to pay for the building of about 80 libraries in Ireland. 66 of the libraries were actually built, and of this 66, 62 of them have survived. Of this 62, one stands in Athea. Athea Carnegie Library is a detached 4-bay, single-storey, single-room building designed by architect Richard Caulfield Orpen and built in 1917. It features a hip slate roof and rough cast rendered chimney stack with oversailing red brick cornice. The eaves are timber clad, and originally it would have had cast iron rainwater goods, but they have unfortunately been replaced with plastic ones. Some evidence still remains of the cast iron downpipes. The walls are finished to a rough cast rendered finish with rendered plinth. On the front elevation, a tooled limestone date plaque can be seen. It has square-headed window openings with tooled limestone sills, raised rendered reveals, and 6/6 pane timber sliding sash windows. The door is a square-headed door opening having chamfered reveals to the porch. It has a tooled limestone step and timber battened door. In 2005, following the Disability Act, a disability access ramp was built with galvanized steel railing. It has an ashlar limestone break front porch to the front facade which faces east. This ashlar limestone break front porch is a trademark of the architect Orpin's work. The break front porch seen here is a trademark of the architect who designed this library, Richard Caulfield Orpin. Constructed using limestone blocks bonded together using a lime sand mortar, it has stood the test of time with very little damage. The limestone porch makes the library instantly recognizable as a Carnegie Library. In some cases, we can see that the mortar has begun to fall away as a result of weathering. In places, we can see that an attempt has been made to repair the mortar, but it is clear that the correct approach has not been adopted. We will now look at the correct approach for repairing this style of ashlar stonework. In cases where repointing is required, the following steps should be followed. Decayed or damaged mortar should be removed or raked out of the joints using fine raking tools as shown in the picture. Alternatively, a thin steel plate or plasterer's joint tool may be used. Extreme care must be taken to ensure that the stonework is not damaged. Next, a new mortar must be made up to the consistency of 1 part lime to 1 part sand. When using the masking tape method, the damaged joint must be covered using masking tape. A cut is then made in the masking tape at the location of the damaged joint in order to reveal it. Using a joint tool, mortar is then inserted into the joint through the cut in the masking tape. The masking tape acts as a barrier, protecting the outside face of the stonework from the mortar being inserted into the joint.